Hi gang, the Solar Auxilia are one of the most common Imperial Army formations of the Horus Heresy, a force of highly trained and well-equipped void combat specialists to support your Space Marine legions. So in this video I'm going to go through their army list, explain basically what everything does and where you can find all the models. So the Solar Auxilia are back with an army list in the Liber Imperium book for the Horus Heresy game. The Solar Auxilia represent one specific regimental pattern used by the Imperial Army during the Wars of the Heresy. One of the most popular and standardized ones, a force of well-equipped and trained regular human soldiers, clad in bulky void suits and supplied with the most advanced vehicles the Imperium could manufacture, all in the hope that they could keep up with the legions. They're a really distinctive way to do regular humans in 40k and a really strange army in the Heresy game, based around rank upon rank of riflemen supported by lots of armour and artillery. At the time of writing, practically everything in the army though is produced as a resin Forge World kit, and it's not a small army, so it can be one of the more expensive ways to play the Horus Heresy. However, there are some alternate options and plastic kits that can help, and I'll get to them as we go through this. Okay, standard parameters apply for these videos. I'm going to go through all the units in the army and what they do, but I'm not going to talk about power or how good things are. Competitive Warhammer's a bit silly. What's good changes every 5 minutes anyway. And with all these videos, I'm going to include both the core units from the Liber book, plus any other units released in the Legacies PDF, because the PDFs say they can be used in every version of the game anyway, so there's no reason not to. And the Solar Auxilia get a lot of extra stuff in there, so it's definitely worth taking a look. Okay, let's start with how this army works. There are three big special rules here that separate it from a regular legion force: Close Order, Tercios, and Cohort Doctrines. Close Order is a new unit subtype that most of your infantry get. Units with this only have a coherency of 1 inch and are a bit slower when running, but they can move half distance and still fire heavy weapons as if they were stationary, which is important because a lot of their basic weapons are heavy. The Tercio rule affects more how you build your army. A Tercio consists of up to 3 similar units with a command squad attached, and the whole thing counts as one choice on the force organization chart. This is how most of your units are selected. From infantry squads to tank squadrons, you can usually just take 1 unit, or you can take up to like 5. All units in the Tercio have to be deployed together, after which they can move apart, but they might not want to, because as long as they're in formation within 3 inches of each other, the whole Tercio can use the same reaction. And lastly, Cohort Doctrines are how you theme your army, and they're a new thing for this version of the Heresy game. As long as you have one model with the Cohort Doctrines rule, you get to pick one, so let's just quickly look at them. Solar Pattern Cohorts are like the original formation of the Solar Auxilia, based around a core of hardened veterans doing void assaults. They can take elite Velataris as troops, but they can't take as many tanks or artillery units. This is kind of the equivalent to Pride of the Legion. Ultramar pattern cohorts are the opposite. Massed infantry units who can take even bigger infantry tercios who all get +1 to hit when they're standing next to each other. Reborn cohorts are veterans who had settled on a planet and then took up arms again during the Heresy. They're better shots and have better leadership, but lack armor and artillery, and are slow old men who can't run very far. Armoured Fist pattern cohorts can take tanks as troops and HQs, but everyone has to be in a transport vehicle. That's your armoured company option. Penal cohorts are interesting. They either represent later foundings with questionable recruits, or units made to copy the Solar Auxilia. Their basic infantry get Furious Charge, Feel No Pain, and a broader selection of weapons, but they lose their Close Order ability. Feral pattern cohorts are those recruited from Feral Worlds. They get counterattack and can be bought Fear, but they have to charge if they're able to. Siege pattern cohorts can take artillery as elites choices as well as heavy support, and are more accurate with those big guns, but everyone has to be in a transport vehicle again. And Iron pattern cohorts get robots. So yeah, loads of fun ways to vary your army, which makes up a little for the fact that there are no militia rules yet. Anyway, let's look at the models and units and where to find them. Your first HQ choice is the obvious one, a Legate Commander. One model, no tercios. You're probably going to take him because he has the Cohort Doctrine rule, and he's the standard lots of options character model. Important note here is that he comes with heavy void armor. There are basically 3 sorts of armor in this list. Void armor gives all the normal troopers a 4-up save. Reinforced void armor is 4-up save, but you get the heavy subtype, and heavy void armor is a 3-up save with the heavy subtype. He has that one. Your only other HQ option is a Tactical Command Tercio, consisting of one Tactical Command section and up to 2 squads of companions, all of whom are equipped with basic void armor. The command section is a captain and 4 to 9 companions, basically veterans who start off with las rifles, but you can swap them for any other weapons you like, including all special weapons, and can take a command vox and a special cohort flag, as well as some close combat options on the captain. One of the things worth mentioning here is that Solar Auxilia las rifles are heavy weapons, and they have 2 firing modes, either a 30-inch range, heavy 2, strength 3 AP6, or 18-inch range, heavy 1, strength 6 AP4. Obviously, the fact that everyone has close order is a massive benefit there. You can then add on 2 additional squads of companions who are basically veterans with the same options but without the special vox and flag. The Legate Commander and the Tactical Command section are both available as the same kit, the Solar Auxilia Tactical Command, though I'm sure a Legate Commander could be built out of anything if you just wanted him. The companion units are regular Solar Auxilia, which we'll get to in a sec, but if you want special weapons, you'll have to convert them. That's all the HQ options, so we'll move on to elites, and the first option is the Auxilia Velataris Tercio. Velataris are the elite spear tip of the army. They're all wearing reinforced void armor that their squad leaders can upgrade to heavy void armor, and they come as standard with Volkite charges. Your Tercio can have 1 to 3 storm sections, squads of 10 to 20 who have the option to swap their Volkite for storm axes, and then an optional Velataris command section of 5 to 10 models who can take power weapons and some other close combat weapons on their first prime leader. And then finally, up to 1 additional Velataris Vanguard section, who are like the heavy support. They all have rotor cannons or heavy flamers. And all of that is 1 force organization slot. Velataris squads with Volkite and axes are available as resin kits from Forge World, as is the Flamer section kit, which I think is now what's meant to represent the Velataris with heavy flamers, but the rotor cannon option is currently missing. So we'll see if they show up in another kit, as they're still in the main book. There's no special kit for the command sections, you just use the normal models. The second elites option is the Solar Auxilia Medici section. Like the Legion Apothecaries, this is 1 to 8 medics who can be attached to other units at the start of the game and come equipped with an auto medicus that gives the unit they're attached to feel no pain. And there's also a special character here, Amos Jovan, a disgraced mad scientist-like doctor forced into service in Ayrton Massad, one of the famous commanders of the Solar Auxilia's army. Annoyingly, Ayrton Massad himself doesn't exist anywhere anymore, but Amos Jovan still does because he's got a model. He comes as a guy with an auto gurney and up to 3 Medici orderlies. He's essentially a really good medipack for your characters. Once per turn, he can perform surgery on a single model to return it to play, and he can sacrifice his orderlies to do more surgeries or improve the chances. There's no official kit for the Medici section. They're probably something you build from the Las Rifles kit, but there is a special kit for Amos Jovan and his buddies. Finally, we have the Charonite Ogryn section. Ogryn's augmented with so many drugs and cybernetics, it's considered illegal on Mars, and only the Saturnine origin of the Auxilia allows them to keep making them. These are a dedicated assault unit with all sorts of buffs, including the Death Frenzy rule. So if they lose a morale check, they lose a model, but the rest get way more dangerous. They're a 3-model kit from Forge World. Okay, on to troops. This is quick. There's only one choice here. The Auxilia Infantry Tercio, consisting of 1 to 3 rifle sections and an optional line command section. The rifle section is 10 to 20 basic infantrymen in void armor and armed with las rifles with options for bayonets and for the usual flag, scanner, or vox. Their sergeant can take a pistol and a close combat weapon if you want. The line command section improves the basic soldiers to attack 2 veterans and the sergeant to a 2-wound troop master, with a few extra extended close combat options. The las rifle section is available as a 20-man squad from Forge World, which obviously you could use as 2 squads or as a command section or whatever, but it's here I'd like to stop for a second and say that since this is an expensive resin army, converting might not be the worst idea. After all, we've already got a doctrine for imitation Solar Auxilia. Personally, I find that Genestealer cultists, who are of course already wearing void suits with Skitarii Vanguard heads, make a pretty good substitute, and though they might take a bit more converting, Kill Team Navy Breachers would look really good. Anyway, after our 1 troops unit, we get to dedicated transports. Pretty much all of the infantry units mentioned so far have the same options. If they're up to 10 models, they can take an Aurochs transport, a slightly faster Rhino with options for a stubber, multi-laser or heavy flamer, and a strict transport capacity of 10 models, which sort of screws up putting Medicais in them. And then any size unit can take a Dracosan armored transport, a massive vehicle based on the Malkador chassis and with space for 22, and that can take a flare shield in addition to its grave Gravis las cannon, or swap the las cannon for a demolisher cannon and drop its transport capacity down to 10. Your fast attack choices in the book are limited to planes. At the smallest end, you can take an Arvus transport, a 2-hull point flying rhino with no weapons, which is basically a 75-point weight deep striker unit. Then in the world of the actually useful, you can take the Divisio Aeronautica Primaris Lightning, basically a missile carriage that can take up to 6 terrifying Kraken penetrator missiles, or the slightly more heavily armed and armoured Thunderbolt, which is actually cheaper but doesn't get as cool missiles. All 3 of these are available on the Forge World site. The Arvus is the Arvus Lighter, and the other 2 are Imperial Navy Thunderbolts and Lightnings. However, the PDF jumps in here, and that gives us a couple more options. The Carnodon Strike Squadron consists of 1 to 3 light tanks based on the Aurochs chassis. They're essentially mini Predators with a selection of turret weapons from twin multi-lasers to twin las cannon, and a large range of sponson weapons for a very cheap 70 points. Not sure why it's in the PDF, as it's still available from Forge World, at least while I make this. And of course, there's the Termite Assault Drill, which can carry 12 models underground. It's still a mainline production model, it's just only marketed for the Space Marines nowadays. Then we're on to heavy support, starting with the Auxilia Armoured Tercio. 1 to 3 Limanrus Strike Squadrons or Assault Squadrons, led by an optional command section. The Strike Squadron is 1 to 3 Limanrus tanks that can be upgraded to Vanquisher, Annihilator, or the twin autocannon Exterminator variants. And the Assault Squadron is the rest, Demolisher, Executioner, or Volkite Incinerator turrets. The command section is just 1 tank with a battle cannon, but that has to be assigned to another squadron for the duration of the game. None of the Solar Auxilia tanks have sponsons, but they do get an extended range of hull and pintle weapons. And the command tank and the strike squadron both get outflank, which opens up some interesting possibilities. Obviously, all of these can be built from the standard plastic Liman Rust kits for 40k, with the exception of the Volkite-armed Liman Rust Incinerator, which is a mixed plastic and resin Forge World kit. But if you really want to splash out, there are resin Mars Alpha pattern versions of the Demolisher, Vanquisher, and regular Rust sold on the Forge World site as Death Core of Krieg vehicles. We then have the Auxilia Artillery Tercio, 1 to 3 batteries of Rapiers or Tarantulas with an optional command section. The command section is the same as you get in the Infantry Tercio. The Tarantulas, for once in their proper place in the heavy support department, come in units of 3 to 10 with options for heavy bolters, las cannons, or Hyperios missile launchers. And the Rapiers come in batteries of 1 to 3 guns with either heavy bolters, laser destroyers, Gravis multi-lasers, or quad launchers with all sorts of interesting shells. All these are Forge World resin kits. The quad launcher and multi-laser are available as special Solar Auxilia versions, but the other 2 weapons you'd have to get with Legion crew and then swap those out. Moving away from the Tercios, your army then has access to the Malkador Heavy Tank, which can take Battle Cannon, Vanquisher, or twin Gravis las cannon options. Worth mentioning that is 4 shots. And its variant, the Valdor Tank Destroyer with its neutron beam laser, and the absolute certainty that it'll make a great big crater when it finally dies. All these are available from Forge World as separate kits, but there's no version for the Vanquisher armed Malkador. You can also take armoured batteries, which are artillery units mounted on Liman Rust chassis, 1 to 3 per unit with either Basilisk Earthshaker cannons or Medusa siege guns. The mixed plastic resin kit comes with both, and to round out the heavy support section, the Solar Auxilia can take everyone's favourite bombbots, the Cyclops demolition vehicles that incredibly slowly creep up on things and blow themselves up. They're also one of the few units that gets to take an Arvus Lighter as a dedicated transport. The individual models for the Cyclops are available from Forge World, but with no operators, and to be fair, you can kind of convert them from whatever. The PDF, of course, gives us access to some more options. First up is the Minotaur battery to complete the list of every Malkador-based vehicle available. This is the artillery tank version with 2 massive Earthshaker cannons and can be taken in squadrons of up to 2. It should be said that since a lot of these tanks, especially the Malkadors, were made for old 40k campaigns, they don't come as standard with Solar Auxilia crew. They come with either Krieg or Renegade crew usually. However, there is a kit of pintle-mounted Solar Auxilia weapons fired by Solar Auxilia crewmen that you can buy separately. Then we have some fun additions. The Trojan support vehicle is kind of a tank-based tech marine that allows you to repair lost hull points, immobilizations, and destroyed weapons on other tanks. The stock Forge World model, still available, is based on the Chimera chassis, but the fluff text makes it pretty clear that you can build this from anything you like. And lastly, the Solar Auxilia get access to the all-new Armoured Support Tercio, consisting of 1 to 3 Thunderer Siege Tank Squadrons or Destroyer Tank Hunter Squadrons led by the command tank from the Le Mans Rust Tercios. These are fun, basically Rust hulls with a single hull-mounted gun, either a Demolisher Cannon or a Proteus Laser Destroyer. Both are old Forge World vehicles. The Thunderer is still available, but the Destroyer isn't anymore, but both are also pretty easy to convert if you wanted them. I converted my own Thunderers from plastic Vindicator bits. Okay, on to Lords of War. There's only 2 options in the basic list, but loads more in the PDF. First up, we have the Malcador Infernus. It's no bigger than any of the other Malcador vehicles, it's just way more killy with its giant flamethrower. And then the last thing in the book list is the Solar Auxilia Stormhammer, a super heavy tank nobody else gets, and basically an upgun Baneblade with a turret-mounted Stormhammer cannon, twin battle cannon, and 3 sponsons on each side. This is available as a mixed plastic and resin kit from Forge World, based on the Baneblade kit. Which is up next. The PDF gives us options for most of the basic Imperial Guard Baneblade variants. The Baneblade, Banehammer, Stormlord, Shadow Sword, and Storm's Sword, all of which can be built from that kit, and thus probably represent the best value per point in the list. Plus you have an option for the Forge World Stormblade with its plasma blast gun. You can also take the usual selection of Forge World tanks with datasheets that are meant to represent all the weird and wonderful relic vehicles of the Great Crusade. For battle tanks, these are represented by the Macarius variants, mid-scale super heavies, bigger than a Malcador but smaller than a Baneblade, and armed with either battle cannons, Vanquisher cannons, or the rotary bolt cannon. And then you have access to the trusty Crassus Armoured Assault Transport with its transport capacity of 35 models, and for artillery, the Praetor Armoured Assault Launcher. All of those are available from Forge World as resin kits, though of course you could convert your own, that's what the datasheets are included for. And finally, the PDF also gives us a fortification in the form of this static artillery battery. These can take Earthshaker or Medusa cannons and represent the flat artillery platforms Forge World used to make, but I don't think do anymore. Again, you could convert something if you really wanted these. And there we go, that's the Solar Auxilia army list. It's a nice difference for the Horus Heresy, but it is definitely one of the most expensive armies you can buy. Not only does it require a fair amount of models, but all those models are currently resin. I could absolutely see some of the basic units in this coming out as plastic though, especially because there's a lot of gaps in the list at the moment. Things that are in the book but not available as resin kits from Forge World. And of course, the galaxy's a big place and there's plenty of options for you to convert something if you really wanted to use them. Anyway, hopefully that's a good introduction to what might be possible. Thanks for watching. And if you'd like to see more videos about the Horus Heresy, there should be a little box popping up on the right there. And if you'd like to support the channel, well, I've got links to affiliate stores and links to my Patreon in the thing below. See ya!